I have a shutdown time.
Yes, ma'am.
And 7 o'clock it's time for me to go to my room. And it's time for me to choose if I do TV, what type of TV I'm going to watch, if I'm going to watch something spiritual or whatever. A lot of times it's, documentaries. I like those type of things. And I set in those.
Right.
I set in those things because I like learning about life and people's style of life and everything. But that's my time. I kind of, around 7 o'clock every day, I'm done with everything else, and I go. I don't go to bed till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
But the other self-care is at about 11, 12 o'clock. Once Pastor goes to bed, I'm back in my kitchen area or in my living room or whatever, and I do my reading. That's when I do my Bible reading. Wow. And do my praying and all of that. So that's a self-care for me, because I'm putting some spiritual things in there that I need. Because without the spiritual things, the functioning of the human body is just not going to be right.
Amen.
So you got to have that first. So that I put in God then, and do a lot of praying and all those type of things. Late night is when I do that. So I go into my cocoon and do those things. Yeah.
Now, you ever have a day where you weren't able to do that, and how did you feel?
Absolutely, felt fine. I make adjustments.
Okay.
Yeah, I adjust to the situation and just keep it moving.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't let anything just throw me like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Excellent. Anybody else about self-care?
Am I the only one who does retail therapy?
No.
I think I'm the only one who's admitting it. Okay, because Sister Karen caught me retail therapying one day. But I have to tell you, a friend just asked me yesterday to pray for her daughter. She's my little play daughter at Ole Miss, and she gets anxiety. And so she was saying, pray for her over tests, over looking for a grad opportunity and things of that nature. And so I said, with the anxiety, what my grandmother used to tell me is stop and count your blessings. And you all, that's right, gratitude. And it works at all ages.
Yes, ma'am.
And the older you get, you have more to be thankful for. So I think that part of what I do for self-care is just give myself a little time to be thankful for everything. Forget the things I won't at Nordstrom's, but think about the things that I have.
I love it.
That I have already, right? And pretty soon I really don't need that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. Retail therapy within reason, within your budget. There's nothing wrong with that. You have to stop. Again, self-assessment. You have to know. Right. So we talked a little earlier about self-assessment and the importance of that, and you have to know yourself. You have to have a PhD in self. We never want anybody else to define us. They can add to us. Remember the cake and the frosting? Cake always has to be there. That's a huge part of self-assessment. Karen just gave an excellent example about that. When you live alone, sometimes you don't have that. You got to look in the mirror, and you got to work on self, and then reach out. Am I tripping? Do I need to readjust this? What do you think? To a trusted person. So very good. Anybody want to do anything with self-assessment? Tell me how you do your self-assessment process. Because when I get up in the morning, we tell ourselves stories all day. All day we tell ourselves stories, and it just depends on if it's a negative story or a positive story. Well, we're constantly thinking about ourselves, situations, life. So you have to monitor what your story is. So if I get up and I'm feeling a certain way, and I generally do my prayer and devotion in the morning, then I know that I have to do that, really dig deep in order, because I can't show up at work in my feelings, because I have too many other feelings I have to adjust to. And so I would say 3/4 of the time I do okay, some days I don't. And then I have to continue. But what happens to me is I remember the scripture, and I remember my devotional from the morning. And then when I find myself getting off track, then I can self-correct. Because I've done that. The mornings I don't, it's a different day. So that's kind of my part of, that's how my self-assessment starts in the morning, is by prayer and reading my devotional. And then I can go on my way. Anybody else want to add anything to self-assessment? Stephanie?
I come from a family that was very busy, owned businesses, worked 24/7, and glorified just being busy. And so I've learned, I started that way. If you're not working 2 jobs, if you're not going 100 miles an hour,
Right.
if you're not ever, and you cannot, I've learned the last few years, you cannot glorify being busy. You never stop, you don't have time for assessment if you're
Right.
trying to fill your things with stuff, just whatever that is, whether it's shopping, it's talking, it's TV, whether it's work more, overtime, it doesn't matter. It's just, don't glorify being busy. And Pastor said years ago, is it a good thing or a God thing?
Right.
And I've had to learn that just because I'm busy, just because I'm working, just because, doesn't mean that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And that doesn't mean it's good self-care. So I've had to rethink that, because my family thinks the busier the better.
Right.
The more you work, the happier, it's just fill. And it's not peaceful at all.
Correct.
And so
correct.
you can't find peace in that chaos, even if it's nice things. So
Right.
you've got to slow down and just be still.
So she just gave an example of one of the core beliefs that she grew up learning in her family was stay busy, busy, busy. Now, why might people do that? What purpose does staying busy? Very distracting. Avoidance. Right. And, it's a learned behavior. If you grew up seeing everybody working 50 million hours a day, then you believe that that's okay to do, but it does prevent you from doing a lot of these things. Because if I'm busy, if I'm working overly so, I'm struggling with boundaries. If I don't have to work overtime, but I'm always signing up for it, then maybe I need to work on my no a little bit. Just saying. All of us have busy seasons where maybe we work more than other times. But again, it's about balance. So good example. And she had to use self-assessment to kind of figure, well, wait a minute, why am I doing this? What's the purpose? All behavior is motivated by something. There's a reason for behavior. And it's our job to figure out what that reason is. Okay? So what about triggers? Everybody know what their triggers are? Who doesn't know what their triggers are? I can help you. Every single person in here, besides maybe some of my young people in here, should know what your triggers are. Triggers are events, people, situations that bring up a certain emotional response, and then we have certain behavior associated with the response and the emotion. Then we make choices based on how we feel, and then we have consequences. So feelings aren't facts. That's why we pay attention to them. They're important, but they're not facts because they change too much. And they're also very irrational at times, so they can be very misleading. Right? So give me an example of what just a general trigger might be.
People pleasing.
Tell me about that.
I know for myself, I have to know the difference between a fact and a feeling
Okay.
so that I can deal with it in the proper context, because emotion can get you out of whack. An example was the day of my back surgery. I told my wife that we would be in the operating room shorter than we were. And in recovery, laying in the hospital bed, I felt terrible that the surgery went longer, which was totally out of my control. There was
Correct.
nothing I could do about that. But that trigger of, I hope she's not mad because she had to wait X amount of hours instead of 2 hours or
Right.
whatever it was. So that, and establishing who I am at the moment. So I can't go around and think about how I was when I was 6 or 7, because that's
Right.
how you hear things, and that triggers responses. I do know that it is difficult right now for me because I can't help my wife.
Right.
And so not being able to help makes me think I am less than. And then you have to separate, well, what is the fact?
Yes.
The fact is you had a 5-hour surgery to fuse your spine.
Boom.
That's not a feeling. That's just fact, and then living in that.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. You have to. I had to do a lot of self-assessment, and had he not grown and learned how to do that, that could have gone way off the rails, right? So we have to know. You have to know. One of the things that I help people do is really identify their triggers, because if you don't, you're going to be going, people are going to have you going every which way but the right way. Because triggers aren't going anywhere. They're not going anywhere. It's our job to manage them. But if I don't know what they are, if I can't go back, and oftentimes people will just, oh, why do I have to talk about my childhood? Here's why. Because that's where your core beliefs were developed. That's where your triggers were developed. He went all the way back to identify why he was a people pleaser. So if I don't know that, then every time I get angry or emotional or sad or hurt, I'm going to be stuck if I don't know why I'm triggered and what to do about it. It's why and what. So, very good example. Anybody else have any triggers that they have identified?
My kids, my children, my sons, and my finances.
What about them?
Because I've always been put in a position, and then I assumed as I grew up the position
There you go.
of a caretaker, where I had to take care of everybody around me. So when my sons, when me and their mom got divorced and separated, not being there to take care of them, not
Right.
being there to, when their grades were going down, to
Right.
be able to talk them through, walk them through it, lay down discipline and know that it's going to be what I say is going to be what goes. And then to see their development and see, you know, them go through certain things and not be able to make it go away for them, it was hard, was really hard. I thank God they're doing well now. And then my finances, like this week I got hit. I had a triple dinger this week. Had something going on with me physically, and I had to make a doctor's appointment. And when I called to make the appointment, they said, okay, let's see when we could get you in. And then they was like, can you be in first thing tomorrow, 8:45? And that was like, okay, this thing is serious here, you know? And that whole 24 hours, I thank God for our pastor and his messages lately of the things that he was going through. Because I actually sat out, I got my little cigar lounge on my deck. And I actually, before going to work, I was watching, listening to Pastor's last two
Right.
Messages, which really, it got me through.
Right.
And
You used
then,
a coping skill, by the way.
pardon?
You used a coping skill, by the way.
Yes. And then the other day, General Motors, out of the blue, they announced that they were voluntarily
I heard
releasing
that.
their salary employees. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, just bought a house, just got a car, just did this, just got that. And what are we gonna do? Well, what am I gonna do? Not even, because I gotta take care of my wife, and I gotta take care of home, and I gotta do this, and we got all these plans, and Lord, what are we gonna do? The unknown, if I can't see how to deal with it or what the outcome's going to be, I put it all on myself instead of just trusting God
Right.
and trusting the process. DJ gave me a message years ago that I'm not that special, that
You really
everything
are.
doesn't revolve around me and what I've done in my life, and because I've done these things, so I was able to deal with that part of it. And then
Right.
yesterday we had a little info meeting with the plant manager, and he's like, well, if you don't volunteer, there may be an involuntary separation, but it won't involve people on my level in manufacturing. Like, okay. So that made it better, because I thought we're going to have to pack up, we're going to have to transfer, we're going to have to do this, and I got all these.
So you really went down the rabbit hole.
Oh, I do that.
Okay, that's suffice to say,
I
you just
do
went
that.
down the
It's
rabbit
like
hole. Okay.
I'm almost programmed to think of the worst case scenario.
Right.
And then how to deal with that, and then when it
Okay.
doesn't transpire that way, then I'm like, oh, okay,
Okay.
But in the meantime, I'm taking myself through all of this,
Right.
and it does impact my mental.
Yeah. So what can be done if we're identifying our triggers, and finances, and you feel like you should have been there for your sons? You were there for your sons. It was just in a different way. So I always like to challenge people what they say, because what you say is what you're thinking.
Well, I
and
believe that, as far as my sons go, that I was there.
Exactly. Exactly. It was just in a different way.
I was getting these phone calls. It's really more of how could I have prevented, like I could be in control and prevent like one of my boys from getting into drugs and having to put him in rehab.
Have you figured out that answer?
No.
Tell me if you have.
No, I haven't. And
All right.
that's the onus, the responsibility that I put on myself.
Right.
And it really was unfair to myself.
Yeah, exactly. Because here's the deal. As parents, we set a foundation, we teach, we discipline. After that, they're making choices, and they're going to make choices how they make choices. So I just kind of like to normalize, because you really went down that rabbit hole, and what we therapists call catastrophizing. That's what you did. You went all the way. Y'all was going to be homeless pretty much, and you was going to have to transfer. I mean, that's what we do, though. That's what we do to ourselves. So then we have to jump back up to self and say, wait a minute. What are the facts of this particular, what are the facts? Because all we have to do is look at our history. This isn't the first time you've been triggered like that. What did you do then? And so whatever lessons, if we don't like how something turned out, or we don't like how we handle something, you learn the lesson and you do it different next time. Okay. So we should be constantly building on what we go through. Each situation shouldn't, I don't like to should on people, but I'm going to should on you this time. It should not trigger you in the same way. I'm just saying that. Or you shouldn't sit in it as long as before. Like you're still going to get triggered, but you're going to be able to do this. First, go to God. Okay, God, this is a little scary for me, but let me meditate on your promises for me in these situations. And then you go on down and do your mental health maintenance work. Yes, sir.
I would say, for me, I wrote down secrets, but it's really just like not communicating.
Okay, that's a big trigger for me too.
Yeah, for me, I would say I'm an easygoing person, but when I feel like someone's trying to dictate my feelings, or like, oh, I'm not going to tell her right now, I'm going to tell her later, that actually triggers me, that later part, because I feel like they're trying to be in control of like how I'm feeling, which really, it probably would have been less if you would have just told me beforehand, which I think that's why now when I communicate, I'm very straight to the point. I don't like going around things, because I know I don't like that feeling.
Right.
But I do notice and it's really just, I've noticed with family members, because growing up, there were a lot of things not said.
Right.
And even though sometimes like I tell people that up front, it seems like they still try to like control how I'm feeling. I've had like a few instances where my grandma, she was in the hospital. I had just gotten to college at the time, and they didn't tell me. And it was obviously big enough for family members to come out of town to come see her, because they were thinking she wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
So they thought the appropriate time to tell me was my birthday, when I was coming a few weeks later. And that really just like set off such a deep like trigger. Like, why would you do something like that? So for me, anytime anyone holds like any type of secret, I just don't like that. I just feel like they should be upfront with me, tell me the truth, because I'm going to be that for them. So I learned that at an early age as a trigger. But recently, I also learned that I'm a really like giving person. So when I feel like someone's taking advantage of that, that also triggers me.
Okay.
So I just learned that recently as well too.
Okay, very good. Now, even though I just shooted on Elliot, what you did was people shouldn't do this, and people should do that, and people should talk to me a certain way. None of your business. None of your business. Your business is how you're going to set boundaries, knowing that you're a giving person, whatever that means to you. Then that means I have to really set boundaries, because no one can take advantage of me unless I allow it. That's on me. That's on me. People can talk and communicate any way they want to. Not my business. My business is making sure I have clear and concise communication. So again, triggers aren't going to go anywhere. People are going to still talk to you the way they talk to you. They're going to still react in the same way. They're still going to talk around. Everybody doesn't have the same capacity to communicate. That's what I had to learn. Everybody does not have the same capacity. If you have not sat in this church or learned the things that we learn in this church, and even us that have, it's still difficult. So I just assume that they're where they're at. It's my job to make sure I'm doing the clear communicating. If they still don't get it, maybe they don't want to get it. Still not my business, you know? So again, that self-assessment, knowing that you don't like secrets and people keeping stuff from you, that's not going to stop. So then you get to decide how you're going to respond to it. Okay.
Alrighty, I have 2 triggers, at least.
Just 2? Okay.
So my first one is definitely like in communication with anybody, like raised voices.
Yeah.
Second one, I mean, that's just a start.
But let me stop you there.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know why that triggers you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But I'm not doing a good enough self-assessment to mentally be in a better place than where that takes me.
Okay. So you're in process.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Growing up, go to grandma and grandpa's, and they're fighting, and it's all heck breaking loose. Coming home, stepdad and mom doing the same thing.
Right.
And then it comes down to that communication, which is lack of good communication, lack of effective communication. Then it comes to me, and it's the same thing. So for me, it's very like almost flip a switch type thing. And I feel very defensive. I feel very ineffective as far as like what I want to communicate. I feel like I'm getting attacked. I feel like, I just feel like I'm just on like full guard basically.
Okay, and you went there because I know he can take it. I was going to dig a little bit, because when we're triggered, like the loud voices to me, because I grew up with parents fighting and domestic violence, loud voices in men trigger me differently than women. Women can hoop and holler and scream all they want to. Men, it's a little bit more threatening, or used to be. So you already went there. You know why, what emotions come up in you when voices get loud. And you said you felt ineffective to manage that, or just ineffective as a person, or?
I felt ineffective as far as my response. So sometimes, and I need to be better at it, I take the time and come back and say what I need to say, which is what I need to do all the time. The other times is more like a peeing contest, for lack of a better terms. It feels very like
so
ram,
they get
ram
loud,
versus
you
ram.
escalate with them, or?
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
yeah. Like.
Okay.
It's like it's trying to battle something that's not. I don't even need a battle.
Okay.
I need to internalize better, be better about that, and then effectively communicate how that's not okay, which is how I've set boundaries.
Right.
Some people I've had to cut off, and then some people I've set boundaries like this isn't okay. That's not a way that we can communicate. So
Excellent.
luckily me and my wife do a very good job at communicating, but there's still times to where I'll trigger her because I'm having ineffective communication because
Okay.
we had ineffective communication, and so I have to keep continuing to work on that and have that accountability on my part, but also be vulnerable enough to explain to her
Right.
like why that bothers me.
Excellent, excellent. It is okay to take timeouts. It really is. When you find that things escalating and either you're shutting down or it's getting too tense, it really is okay to say, hey, you know what? I need to take 5-10 minutes to cool down. Let me step out, and then we can come back and talk about this. And that way, that can give yourself time to kind of work on what your words and what you want to say. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you.
So this just came to me as I'm listening to everybody. Getting in trouble is a trigger for me.
What does that mean? What's trouble?
It really is. So I'm literally assessing this as everybody's talking.
Okay.
So my mom was an alcoholic. She was a functioning alcoholic. But my presence sometimes annoyed her.
Okay.
So she would fuss, kind of yell at me. Sheila, get out of here. Sheila, be
Right.
quiet. Even as an adult, like if I would call her too much, she'd be
Okay.
like, don't call me anymore today. Yeah.
Okay.
So getting in trouble triggers me back to like a childlike state.
Absolutely.
And it gives me anxiety. So like if the praise, for example, if the praise team gets in trouble about being late, even though we're always on time, for like a few weeks, I'm stressed. I'm like, we gotta get there, we gotta get there, we gotta get there. And then he's like, aren't we always on time? But it
Okay.
triggers me. And I haven't got past how to get through it, but it triggers me and it lingers. So then I'm always worried.
Right.
Like even today, I was like, oh, we got to get there early because we don't want Pastor Shue, pushing us in here. We need to be here, get our papers. I mean, all this is going on in my mind because I don't want to get in trouble. The fact is,
Excellent example.
I'm an adult.
Yes.
I'm responsible for my own time.
Yes.
If I know I'm on time, then I shouldn't worry. But that child in me,
Right.
like my mom, just and I think a part of it's a disappointment because I'm a formal people pleaser.
Thank you.
So you two be quiet.
You're in recovery.
Yeah. So you don't want to disappoint the people that you love or care about or respect.
Okay.
So
Very good example. I just want to remind everybody that we're not responsible for other people's feelings, thoughts, behaviors. We are not. And the minute you can take that off your plate and leave it off, we certainly affect other people by our behaviors, of course. But we don't make people feel a certain way, and they don't make us feel a certain way. We choose how we're going to respond. She gave a really good example of how if we're not mindful and stay and keep ourselves in the present, most of the time when we're triggered, it's because of core beliefs and childhood issues. So if you don't manage those, stuff is going to keep, you say trouble, situations, because we have such an excellent praise team leader that requires excellence from us, and he's not going to change. So then we have to respond and decide how we're going to respond to any anxiety that comes up. Again, we tell ourselves stories all the time. She told herself a story about being late. If she doesn't move herself in the present and stay mindful of the present, she'll still be that little girl. And she'll react from that, and that's what we react from. Our triggers are usually we're reacting from what happened to us when we were kids, and what that reminds us, because we're pretty helpless when we're kids. We don't have any choice. And so if you don't heal that and work on that and remind yourself that I'm an adult, this is March 11th, 2023, it's not way back then. And so it's all about what story you're going to choose to tell yourself. You can still tell the old story, or you can tell a new one. And if you tell a new one, then your responses are going to change. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Really, really good examples. Anybody else with triggers before we move on? Miley?
Just speaking of self-assessment, all the stories, because my head is, the committee is having a conversation in my head. But recently, I think my trigger is I always felt like I have to take care of everybody, and I don't take care of myself. So that's still that piece of it. But just my kids, so the catastrophizing, like thinking the worst is going to happen, and I do that, and that stems from that child that I'm working on. My thing is letting my husband in, who wants to help, but he gives me space. It's really good, but I come in and I'm like, I need an emotional hug. And he learned this on TikTok, which helps me just to lean into him and to just let that go and to be able to think about it, because it gets so crazy. And just think, like right now, I'm anxious. I think about my kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, something's gonna happen. I hear a siren. It's them. And that stems from that. The ball always dropping, but it doesn't have to. And then it brings it back to God. So my self-assessment is really bringing it, okay, God didn't bring us this far to leave us. He's going to be fine. And really trying to be that supportive person for DJ in what just happened with, and learning about that and saying, no, it's okay. And then learning about myself and giving us grace and then moving away from that, because it's tiring. It's tiring worrying about my grown kids and understanding that God has them, and I really have to talk myself through that and not calling them to say, okay, make sure you do this, this, and this. And it's been, the last month has been really like, okay, what do I do? So learning that, and then my self-care is going to get my nails done every 3 weeks.
Very good, very good, very good. Part of our mental health maintenance plan has to be, and I'm going to jump down to boundaries. If you're working harder than the person who has the issue, you're out of order. You're out of order. It's not your business. With adults, and I'll say this again because I've said this before, we can give good advice if they ask us. We can be good role models by doing our own mental health, taking care of our own mental health. We can, I'm missing one, give good advice, be good role models, be a healthy support when they ask for it. But if you're trying to drive the car, and I love my visual on the highway, I'm staying in my lane, because if I don't stay in my lane, I'm going to crash. Or if I get out of my car and try to jump and drive somebody else's car, my car is going to crash. Now, I can allow someone in my lane, but they'll have to go beep, beep. And sometimes people do beep, beep, sometimes they don't. But I still am in charge of how I respond to somebody getting in my lane, and you for sure are going to hear if you try to get in somebody else's lane. Now, some people will invite you in their lane and then try to run you down. So again, with other adults who are not disabled, you get to stay in your lane, and you trust that they're going to be okay, and you trust they will ask for help if they need it. So my folks that come in super duper anxious and stressed are probably not in their lane. There's plenty of other things in the world of life that can cause anxiety and concern, but we put a whole bunch on our plate. That's not our business. And then we get mad when people don't do what we say or take our advice that they didn't ask for. You're out of order. So let's talk about boundaries. Do you know when to say yes and when to say no? You still working on it? What's difficult for you? Why is it difficult to set boundaries? You got to go back up to self-assessment. Why do you think it's hard for people to set boundaries? I know I have some recovering people pleasers in here. And so my people pleasers feel like they're so concerned about other people's feelings that they don't set effective boundaries, and then you're stressed out and feel unappreciated and blah, blah, blah. So what can you do, those of you who are recovering people pleasers, what can you do about that, or what have you done, or what's been helpful? Share it with me. Let it go. What does that mean to you? You know I'm not going to let you just What does that mean? Because that means something different.
You just
for
have to
everybody.
let it go. Put it in God's hand. You know?
Well, we kind of learned about that last month.
It's hard to describe. you just have to let it go. I mean, because if
So
not,
let me ask you
if
this.
not,
What's your
it's going to take
behavior?
your mental, it's going to interfere with your family life, it's going to have you a total wreck, okay? I was in the hospital behind this, okay?
Okay. So what you're describing is the effects of what was happening when you were not letting it go.
Right.
What is your behavior? How do you know when you're letting something go? What is your behavior? What are you thinking?
I feel much better.
You feel better, why?
I feel at ease.
Okay, there you go.
I
You
feel
more relaxed.
relieved.
Yes.
I feel a better person.
Okay.
And First Lady helped me through this.
Okay.
I
Absolutely.
feel like I'm a reborn person.
Okay. There you go.
You know, that's
There
how
you
I
go.
feel.
And those are all good feelings that will signal to you that you are not stressing out. Now, your behavior might be, if the phone rings and I know it's that person, I'm not going to answer it. Or I may answer it and say, hey, remember our agreement is that I'm going to allow you to handle that, and I'm letting it go. Good luck with that. Click. So we have feelings and thoughts, but we have to have the behavior to back it up. Because I can tell people all day, nope, I'm not going to do that anymore. Nope, nope, nope. But the minute they call, I'm right back there. Right, right, right. Exactly. And it's a process, because if you've said yes for most of your life, people are going to test your boundaries. They're going to test it because they don't believe you, because you haven't had them in the past. So they're going to test and push against it. So not only do we have to set them, we have to maintain them.
Yes, one of my boundaries is beforehand, I used to answer every beck and call with my children, and they were making choices that were getting them in trouble.
Right.
Less than 24 hours, and I'm not afraid to say it, my son got caught up in being arrested. I said, you know what, I don't know, but I have a voicemail ministry. So he bugged my phone, and I'm a realtor, you know, so
Okay.
I'm going to answer the phone. When I answered, you know, I did my self-assessment. Hey, how am I feeling? That halt, you know, because
Right.
it's like I know it's going to be a situation. He explained the situation, what he got in trouble about, and I said, okay, he wasn't asking for wisdom. He was actually asking me to rescue him.
Right.
And,
there you go.
And there was a point where, you know, I've done what I can do for my
Right.
children.
Right.
I have taught them the word. I have sacrificed and had actually came to the knowledge to have the balance to help them navigate through life, help them, you know, see my life as the example. And I'm like, it's going to be okay. Like, you need to pay the penalty. You need to give your life to Christ. And I love you. And that was the end of that discussion.
Very good.
And so instead of getting into this war, you setting my triggers off about
Right.
what happened when, and I ain't never been there. I'm like,
I love it.
we're not doing this today.
Right.
You know, and then I felt so great and relieved and free. It's like, it's just amazing to live a life of abundance. You know what I mean?
Right.
And,
right.
you know, so it was, like I said, it was friend. I mean, he blew my phone up. I mean, to the point where it had to be cut off.
Okay.
I mean, it died literally, but it was like, no, I trust God to give him right back, because he allowed me to be his mom, you know,
Right.
and to be a servant. I'm not treating him enabling and serving and going broke because of his choices.
Very good. Excellent. And he didn't stop. He kept, see, they're going to keep pushing. They're going to keep testing. Right. Very good. Love it. Love it, love it. Excellent, excellent boundaries. But it was a process. It doesn't happen overnight. One of the things that prevents us from setting them is guilt. I hate guilt. It's such a useless emotion unless you're learning from your past mistakes. But if you let that guilt settle in, people will see that a mile away and push every guilt button you have. And then you're stressed out, not relaxed, not free, but stressed out, feeling like you have to make up. We can't make up for anything in the past. All you can do is learn. And if you have children that want to push that, well, you weren't there for me, you didn't do bop, 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 do it better than me then. That's my response. You're absolutely right. I did not do everything correct. Please be better than me. I don't allow it because it's a drag and you already have enough on your plate that's legitimate. Don't put other people's stuff on your plate. Do not do that. Anybody else have examples of healthy boundaries that they've set or learned or in process?
I'm better about setting boundaries. What hindered me before that was being scared to lose people, being scared to lose specifically family members was very scary. A quick example, because I can talk forever. My grandpa is somebody, the closest male figure that I had ever grown up with, and had to set the boundary of cutting him off. There was very negative, him and my grandma went their separate ways, divorced, so on and so forth. I grew up with him, but it started becoming very toxic, and they live in the same small town, so to the point to where when I came home from college, I was working for him. I was like, so I'm already hearing all this yappity yap. Talk to my grandma, like, and come to find out, like, while I was gone and stuff at school, like, they'd be going the opposite, like, direction, small town, and he was, like, flipping off and, like, calling and cussing and doing stuff like that. And so for me, I was scared to lose that relationship because I didn't grow up with a lot of men in my life like that. But going to this church, what I had to realize is that's not what a God man would do. And for me to be who I need to be for my family, I can't allow a relationship like that to happen, because then I'm enabling that to happen. Number one, I'm listening to it. So I had to set the boundary of just straight cutting them off, because I can't allow that to be around, because then I'm saying that's basically okay to do. And you're not going to treat my grandmother like that, my brother, like anything like that. So I was scared to lose that. And it took me a lot of like prayer and a lot of things to figure out, but I had to set the boundary of sending him where he needs to be, and I have no communication with him now. So
how do you feel about that?
Relieved. At first it was very nerve-wracking, especially somebody, I mean, we worked together, we talked, I smoked my first cigarette with him. Not that that's really cool or anything, but, you know, we just did a whole bunch of things together. So for having such a close relationship, because he's a very hard-hearted person. He's very rough around the edges, all these kind of things. And I was like the first person he really like loved in life. His kids didn't even really like me because he liked me so much. So to like lose all of that at first, I had to go through that grieving process that we talked about. I had to go through losing that relationship, but I had to realize that what I'm building and what God has for me isn't that, and that can't be included in my growth. So.
Very good. And it is a process, and it's very difficult. That's why most people don't like to do it, because it's hard. But here's the deal, excuse me. If your relationship can't take a no, it's not healthy. Every healthy relationship should be able to hear no, I don't agree. Every healthy relationship, the two parties should be able to hold each other accountable for their behaviors. So if you lose, because I don't think anybody belongs to us, but if you lose someone because of a no, then they probably didn't need to be in your life. And it may sound kind of harsh, but that's the real deal. If I can't disagree with someone or say no, I would prefer not to, or I don't like that behavior, and the person acts a fool or whatever the case may be, again, not your business. Your business is staying in your lane and maintaining your boundaries. Very good.
Amen. I learned from a very wise woman that I need to learn how to understand that being peaceful is better than being correct. And if you decide that you'd rather have peace, the dispute, the argument really doesn't matter, because you're not going to try to be correct, because it triggers things that I heard in the past as in my youth between parents fighting and all of that. And then I have to take the self-assessment of, okay, what is factual?
Right.
What is fiction? and how am I going to deal with this right now in the present time as a 51-year-old male, not a 6-year-old boy.
Correct, correct. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Absolutely. The stories we tell ourselves, if we're not fact-based with them, it will cause anxiety, it will cause depression, it will be trauma triggers for us. You have to look at what the facts of the situation are.
So I just feel like setting boundaries is like uncomfortable. Like it's not my favorite thing to do, but to be a better person, or like I have an aunt and uncle that are wild. They cross every line. They don't ask no questions. They don't respect that I am a dad. I run my family. And so I have to have a conversation with them pretty soon, and just mentally preparing myself for like, hey, you guys are not gonna do this anymore. Like that was disrespectful to me, disrespectful to everybody involved. And I don't really wanna have it. I'm getting emotional now because I love these people. Like they helped raise me. I have very fond memories with them, but some of the stuff that they've been doing recently over the past year is just like, I can't stand for it anymore. I can't be who I am, and I don't like not being myself all the time. So like changing myself, and like, I don't like that.
I love it, love it. What an opportunity, what an opportunity. The most difficult people are your best teachers. If you set those boundaries with them, you won't have any trouble. If they're as difficult as you say, and you're able to set and maintain those boundaries, the more you do it, as uncomfortable as it is, the easier it gets. The easier it gets. Just like they feel like they have a right to cross your boundaries, you have a right to set them. You have a right to set them. And you may lose folk when you do that, but it's a real good test of a relationship. If I never set boundaries, I'll never know if that's a true relationship or not. If I agree to everything, how do I know what's real and what's not? So that's an excellent opportunity for you. You got it. You'll do it. You'll do it. You'll get uncomfortable enough to do it. So you got to choose your uncomfortable. Is it more uncomfortable not to do it and just kind of let it slide? Because it's also teaching them about their behavior. It's teaching them that you're the one person they're not going to do that with. They'll have to pass you by and do it with somebody else. Not your business how they react, not your business how they respond. Your business is setting the boundary. Does that make sense? And you deserve it. That is part of self-care, to set boundaries. Because if I don't set them, I'm going to be stressed and mad and sad and all that. So just think of it as self-care. You can throw me under the bus. Hey, I learned from Counselor Debra that I need to say no. No, don't say it, because I don't want nobody coming after me. Okay. And then coping skills, we're kind of running out of time, but coping skills are anything that's healthy that you can do that's going to enhance your mental wellness. And then gratitude every single day. We need to wake up with gratitude. I don't care if you got the worst day in front of you again, it's what story you're telling yourself about your day. If you're alive and breathing, it's a good day, because not everybody can say that.
Amen.
And so these are just the mental health. I gave you mental health maintenance plan, and we talked about some of this stuff on here. I gave you information about anxiety and depression, and maybe next month I'll go more into detail about what those two diagnoses are. But I really thank you for your attention today. You guys have been great. Thank you for sharing and being transparent, because I really always appreciate that. So thank you, and can someone take us out in prayer, please?